please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.
Our guest today has been named the 5th most creative person in business by Fast Company and is among the 50 smartest people in tech according to Fortune. He's an adjunct professor at Stanford University. He founded Google's Moonshot factory, Google X, and led projects like Google Glass, Project Loon, and some even refer to him as the father of self-driving cars. Taking his passion for self-driving cars a step further and actually straight up in the air, he has partnered with Google's co-founder Larry Page to set up the Kitty Hawk Flyer that's in the business of building flying cars. Sebastian Thrun is a scientist, an educator, an inventor, and now entrepreneur. In 2012, he decided to combine his love for tech and education with Udacity, an online learnings platform that was set up with one mission: shatter the ivory towers and democratize education. Hello and welcome to this special edition of CNBC TV18's Young Turks, India's longest running show on entrepreneurship. We're coming to you today from Mountain View and in conversation with Sebastian of Udacity. Sebastian, thank you so much for speaking to us.
So great.
On CNBC TV18. And, the reason we are here are multiple. But first and foremost, congratulations on making it to the 50 disruptor list. You ranked 8th on the disruptor list that's done by CNBC.
7 to
this
go.
Year. 7 to go, exactly. So before we get talking about what Udacity is up to or planning to do in the future, let's jog back a little and try and understand how did the venture come about. You were working with Google. You've also you're a professor at Stanford. Love to know your journey. How did this whole thing come about?
Every time I have a student at Stanford and they ask me, what is my job going to be? I said, calm down. Your job will pick you. And I was a professor at Stanford, and all of a sudden Udacity just picked me. And here's how it happened. I was working at Stanford as a professor.
Right.
I was running Google X, all these secret projects like self-driving car and Project Loon and Google Glass.
And extremely ambitious ones.
And because I didn't have enough to do,
yes,
in the middle of the night, typically at 2 a.m., I would record my classes at Stanford and put them online. And that ended up to be the very, very first massive open online course, the first MOOC, which I didn't know. But when I put them online, I asked people in the world, do you want to sign up for a free Stanford class? And lo and behold, 160,000 students signed up, many of them from India, I think the majority from India.
While that was the first, idea or the concept of Udacity, and it's interesting that you say that, you recorded this in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. And of course, the moment you read the word Stanford professor and free right next to it, you would want to sign up for that. But I believe that idea didn't really take off while it did initially, but it did not sustain that much. Eventually, you had to shift to building courses that made people more job ready as opposed to this being college courses?
Yeah, so what happened is the very first MOOC was a media sensation, so it was in the New York Times and everywhere. And then the second wasn't that great. And the third was even worse. So we looked at how many students finished. We found that for MOOCs, the finishing rate tends to be something like 5%. And I was thinking, if I teach a course and I lose 95% of my audience, that cannot be a good product. So we did a lot of research trying to understand what can we change. So we found out really important a credential that matters. And Stanford wasn't willing to let me confer Stanford degrees, so I made my own credential, called Nanodegree. Also really important, stuff that matters to people who look for jobs.
Right.
So if I teach old Greek history, that might be fun to learn, but you won't find a job in Greek history. So we really focused and zoomed in on Silicon Valley, like what type of jobs do we need right now, right here, like machine learning, self-driving cars, even flying cars.
Yes.
And then finally, we found that just learning from videos is not that funny and that's that nice. It's actually much more interesting if you have people learn with you, you have a community, you have a mentor. So we added in people. We went back to the 100,000 year long proven recipe that people are actually great. And when we mix our content with services like grading and mentors, all of a sudden we can get completion rates up to anywhere to 90%. You
started working with tech giants, of course, like Google and Facebook. So how did those partnerships come about?
Yeah, so that turned out to work incredibly easy.
Okay.
pretty much every tech company here would love to make contributions to education. They understand their own talent is short, it's hard to hire people in these areas like machine learning. They understand that many of the existing staff are older and probably need a refresher. But more important than all this, they want to make a contribution to world peace and to unity of the world and really go out and educate people all around the world. We teach people in Syria, in Dubai, in the Middle East, in Indonesia, in China, and of course in India. And the prospect of a Facebook, a IBM, an Amazon, an AT&T to be able to reach out to those people and give them meaningful education means a lot to them. So we really catalyzed Silicon Valley. We are now the University of Silicon Valley, so to speak, and we have students in over 190 countries.
And now while we're talking about a unique approach, we are right now just right next to one of Udacity's self-driving cars, and also one of the courses or nanodegrees that you offer in self-driving. How unique and different is that? Talk to us about this.
Well, so self-driving car engineers are incredibly in demand. I looked at recent talent acquisition in the field and found that a Silicon Valley company pays on average something like $10 million just for a self-driving car engineer. And there's no education program on the planet where you can learn it. So I decided, let's just do it. Let's bring the skill set of self-driving cars to the world. We have now way over 10,000 graduates. We have, I think, 40,000 or so enrolls. And the coolest thing is, we bought this car so the best of our students can run their software on this car.
So this is only to run a test code, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can be in India and be a self-driving car student, and your software runs in California on the physical car over here.
All right.
Google, some I know, I founded the self-driving car team. I ran it until very recently. And it's a fine team. It's a great team. But when we think about education, when we bring education to the entire world, then we can help all self-driving car teams. And I don't know a single self-driving car team right now that wouldn't have at least one of our students on the team.
As an entrepreneur, what does it mean to be building a business that's growing so fast? Like, what are your learnings along the way?
So my learnings are that I was totally naive when I moved into it, and we had no business model. And I would recommend people to at least think about a business model before changing the world, because we ended up saying, oh, let's give the courses all away for free, and magically we'll survive.
It is really surprising that a Stanford professor did not have a business model ready, before running a business. Did you really think you're going to, do this project and offer free courses for the rest of the life cycle of Udacity?
I can tell you when I did the very first class, the very first MOOC, and we had 160,000 students, it was almost like a calling. It's like, Sebastian, you have to do this, right? It felt like if I don't do it and spread great education in the world, then that might sound arrogant, but no one's going to do it. Because universities were very locked up, they had to go apply, they're very elitist, right? Ivory tower. And there's no open platform that does incredibly high quality education at the time that I was aware of the same type. Maybe that's mistaken, but I felt the urge to get into this was more important than figuring out the business.
All right, Sebastian, now, just online education or offering courses online. Now, the idea itself, is not disruptive enough. Like, there are many people who've tried it. You have many competitors like Coursera, who you're competing with on a global level. Then, of course, there are, country-specific or local players offering courses for their own region who understand, what that particular region needs. So what makes you disruptive? What do you think is your biggest differentiator?
The focus at Udacity has been for a long time to focus on jobs. So we believe if you trust us your time and trust us a bit of your money, then we have to give you back not just that you're enlightened and smarter and know more, but that you can improve your economic outlook and contribute more to society. And once you make that commitment to jobs, it gets tough. Now you change the entire model. So for example, we don't look for university professors to tell us what to teach. And quite frankly, having one myself, I don't think university professors know that well what job requirements are. We go instead to those companies to hire those people. Like Google, where we've placed over 40 people now, and many other tech companies. And then we don't pretend that we know everything, as I used to do in Stanford. But we do the opposite. Say, hey, why don't you, Mercedes, BMW, whoever you are, help us compile the curriculum.
Yes.
And what comes out as a curriculum is incredibly job specific. We had at times even money back guarantees and people couldn't find jobs and they were very successful.
All right. You know, while you talk about job creation and you talk about everything that Udacity and you personally want to do in this field of getting people or making people job ready, let me ask you, a lot of courses that you offer are in the AI space, and many critiques believe that, you know, AI is going to eventually take over jobs and the world or people eventually are going to be out of jobs. What's your response to that?
So first of all, whether you believe that AI creates jobs or takes away jobs, you ought to be knowledgeable. So I would ask all your viewers to at least get on top of it and understand it.
Yes.
Because if it's true that it changes the job field, you better have those skills. AI is the hottest thing right now in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I believe that almost all repetitive work can be taken over by AI and will be taken over. And not just low-paid work. Recently we found that even like highly paid things like dermatologists, people who find your skin cancer, that a cell phone can do just as well as a very well compensated doctor.
Right.
To me, this opens new opportunities. We've always invented technologies that made us superhuman. Let's go back to the agricultural revolution. Before we had machines in the field, one farmer could provide food for about 4 people. And we are all busy farming, or maybe fighting wars. And now a farmer in a well-developed country like the United States can make food for like 200 people. And it isn't that we all were unemployed, it was the opposite. We invented like new jobs, like TV anchor and software engineer and airplane pilot and plumber and all these jobs that didn't exist before. I believe humanity is incredibly creative, and if we do away with repetitive work, we're going to have even more creativity, even a better planet.
Well, I'm glad that TV anchors cannot be replaced by a cell phone or an AI. But speaking of that, you did say that India is your second largest market. I believe China is also a pretty huge market for you. What's your experience been like working in China? And you know, before I wrap up this interview, tell me what's the road ahead for Udacity?
So China has been a very fast growth market, as is India. We find that the products are a little bit different in India and China. One of the things we found in China is actually really interesting is, I hate to admit this in public, but in certain instances, when we charge more money, we actually have more and better students. And any economist would tell you normally, oh, if your product doesn't sell, make it cheaper. But education seems to have this special trust factor, where it's not just the brand name that we have and our partners with Google and Amazon, but it's also, if it's really, really cheap, it's really free, how can we guarantee it's good? And in the end of the day, I would say every Udacity student pays us with their time more than anything else, with their passion and their time. And to make these nanodegrees is actually, to get through is really hard, right? It takes you a lot of work, a lot of sweat. We don't make it easy. So we want to kind of return the trust to our students by getting them jobs, working with partner companies, and really making sure that they can benefit themselves from the time investment they made. You
know, this philosophy that you said, more expensive the education, better the students. I think all Ivy League colleges have been running on this core principle for many, many years. But
yeah, and we are really, really inexpensive. Like, we did a recent study where we had a money-back guarantee look at like how much money people in, how much does the salary increase. This is a US-based study, but they put an average of $1,300 in, and their first year salary will go up on average by $24,000. So the return of investment is within weeks, right? And we're very proud of it. I mean, if I could make it even cheaper, I would make it even cheaper. We are still losing money as a company, so we are subsidizing the education. But I think there is a future where education can be incredibly affordable and incredibly good.
All right, Sebastian, before I cut into a break, let me ask you, what's your big vision with Udacity? Like, what's your ultimate goal?
If you really ask me for one goal, I would say I would love to double the world's GDP. And that sounds incredibly arrogant, but education in the past has over and over doubled the world's GDP. There's no real progress of any nation that wouldn't be intimately tied to the education system. If I look at education today, it is in certain Ivy League schools actually very good, but it's hard to get in.
Yes.
The vast majority of people in the world are excluded. They're excluded for geographic reason, for ethnicity, for age, for abilities and disabilities and so on. There's so many great people in the world. Just to give you one final number, our initial Stanford MOOC that are taught on Stanford's campus but also online resulted in 200 Stanford students and 160,000 online students. And in the end, I was able to compare those students and stack rank them because I gave them the same exams.
Right.
And the top 412 students were not at Stanford. Just the best Stanford student was ranked number 413. That means India, China, the Middle East, Africa, South America is full of completely amazing people with amazing talent and amazing gut and ability to carry something through.
Yeah.
I think if you just reach the right education, I would love to empower every single person.
All right, empower and provide access. Sebastian, thank you so much for being with us and speaking to us. Thanks a lot. With that, we will cut into a short break, but we move away from Mountain View and take you straight back home to New Delhi.
Acquiring companies is challenging, many times for cultural reasons, many times that, best laid plans on, oh, we could use that technology for X, Y, and Z don't come to bear.
So can I consider there is no plans just yet?
We can't broadcast those.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.
Welcome back. You're watching Young Turks, India's longest running show on entrepreneurship, and we continue putting the spotlight on Udacity, only that we travel from Mountain View back home to New Delhi to continue our conversation with Vishal Makhijani, CEO of Udacity, and Ishan Gupta, MD of Udacity India. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us on CNBC TV18's Young Turks. So let's jog back a little. Vish, you joined the company in 2013. It was still in its nascent phase. Udacity was set up in 2012. Of course, that was pretty much the time when you guys were switching from these online free courses to building a business model, and that's when you came on board. Talk to us about what's been the growth like in the past 5 years, and what's been some of the learnings?
So the mission is still the same from the very beginning. So while the early efforts at making this all work didn't necessarily pan out, the mission to democratize education has actually been the very mission that Sebastian started the company with. We decided in order to build a valuable, important education company that really could fulfill on that mission, hopefully ultimately, we had to decide to do it kind of closer to the job click, I'll call it, like where you could really hopefully deliver evidence and kind of help people connect their dots to their next great opportunity. So that was kind of the impetus for coming up with this thing called a Nanodegree. So in the fall of 2014, we launched our first Nanodegree, and that was the begin of the company getting it, right, and kind of finding product market fit. 3 markets actually do really well outside the United States for us. So China, India, and Brazil, and each of those markets have been doubling their size every year since we got into it, right? At least, actually, and sometimes more. And I think that rate of growth, off a small basis, though, is still reflective of just how rich these ecosystems are.
Okay, now that we're talking about, your global markets, and let me get both of you in, and you guys can decide who wants to take this one. How important is customization when you're running a global business such as yours, but it's in the education space that actually requires or has different needs that are so specific to each region? What's the kind of strategy do you adopt? And as again I mentioned, how important is customization for a business such as yours?
From the very beginning of going international, when Sebastian was still CEO, we decided we wanted to actually grant a fair amount of autonomy to our markets around the world for a couple of key reasons. One is education markets are different, and the existing state of education in these different markets we chose to enter are different stories. And as a result of that, we wanted to make sure that we were adjusting and tuning our approach for those markets. Secondly, we wanted to attract strong entrepreneurs, and we know that if you take a highly controlled approach, you're not necessarily going to attract that kind of talent, and so as a result, we've given a lot of freedom to our markets.
So I think just to take it from there, so we have as an example, we have a machine learning program, which is globally same. It's delivered across the world in the same format. With respect to India, we realize there are a lot of people who might be switching careers, or engineering students in final here who might be wanting to explore a new technology. So in India, we came up with the Machine Learning Foundation program. But when we do localization, we're again very careful that we want to make sure that all our content is coming from global industry partners and is taught in the same way that Udacity delivers it around the world.
So Vish, you're here in India. Are you in talks with any startups or any companies? Are you looking at any acquisition in this region at this point?
We're at the stage where we get exposed to a lot of these opportunities, but I would tell you we're quite careful about doing that. I think from my own experience, I've learned that acquiring companies is challenging, many times for cultural reasons, many times that, the best laid plans are on, oh, we could use that technology for X, Y, and Z don't come to bear. And because those things are a little disruptive from time to time, we're super careful.
So can I consider there is no plans just yet?
We can't broadcast those.
It's also this building collaboration, right? So it's not necessarily acquisition is the only way to work, right? So when you look at India region, we get exposed to a lot of companies, but we're also sort of exploring how we can work together instead of just going the acquisition route, because there is an ecosystem that has to build around online education. So what can we do together collectively?
Every year has been different in this company. I would tell you at this stage of our growth, as we are well over 400 people now globally, in some ways that's actually not that big of a company when you have global aspirations. We try to acquire and bring on the best talent we can. We know that is typically the barrier or gateway, I'd say, to the next great level of execution and whatever new thing you're taking on. So whether you're trying to find the right team to help start a new market, we are very careful about hiring that initial team. We don't always get it right, but we've done a pretty good job recently. And I think that it's essentially the global war for talent, which ironically is how we're trying to help companies too, right? At least in technical areas. But talent is typically the gate to expansion.
With that, let me quickly wind down this conversation. Wish, before I wrap up, help us understand, what does the future for Udacity look like? If you can sketch out a roadmap for us.
Sure. So, we at the end of 2017 we crossed, well over 50,000 students. To give you a sense of the rate of that growth over that period, we started the year around 12,000 students. Right. That resulted in our business growing rather aggressively too. So in 2016, we did around $29 million in revenue. In 2017, we did just over $70 million in revenue. If you look forward, we don't have like firm announcements around it, but you'll see us continue to support more markets over time.
Like?
Well, I think there's some logical next steps if you look at where we are today, whether it be expanding in Asia, whether it be expanding in South America. Those are all kind of logical areas to go next.
And what does the future for the India chapter of Udacity look like, Ishan?
I think we're just scratching the surface right now. Again, India followed the same trajectory as global. We more than doubled our revenue in the last year from the year before. I think we are on a good path right now to do that again. Just from what are the next steps is figuring out how do we get more students on board our platform to take more programs. We launch more programs which are relevant for the Indian students, working with many more enterprises and helping them to transform their talent. So I think we have enough to do for the next 12 months.
Vish and Ishan, thank you so much for being with us on Young Turks and sharing all those details. With that, it's a wrap on this special edition of CNBC TV18's Young Turks. We brought you this special episode all the way from Mountain View and, of course, back home in New Delhi. Tell us what you thought of this episode. You can write into us, youngturks@nw18.com. That's our email ID. Or tweet us at CNBC Young Turks. That's our Twitter handle. We always love hearing from you. Till next time, from all of us here, goodbye and many thanks for watching.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.